time and unnecessary education for ourselves. However, the more we can learn about homeopathy, the more we'll appreciate the power of the subtle, and the more we can become effective with our clients. And that brings us to the final discussion here on the foundations of energy medicine, the function of subspace and the three-level model of matter. So let me go to the board now and illustrate this model. In order to understand the function of subspace, which is another way of talking about quantum reality, this is a model that helps simplify a very complex, potentially complex subject. And it's a model based on a pyramid structure. So if we drew a pyramid, this could illustrate how matter is organized. And if we look at the pyramid divided into three sections, let's say the top section of the model represents the physical domain. And the physical domain is where matter is the most concentrated, as it would be in this model, is the most dense, and also moves at the slowest rate. But we know a lot about the physical dimensions because our senses, our five senses, are all attuned to the physical world. And we have pretty solid basis in understanding and explaining physical events through Newtonian physics, linear math, etc. So there are not too many mysteries left on the physical dimension. A few hundred years ago, it was appreciated that everything, from a chemical perspective, that everything in the physical world could be broken down into a chemical state. And so we could use the molecular to describe the second level of the organization of matter. And by the time we get down to the molecular level, of course, everything in the physical world is supported by molecules. We have to create different sets of laws and rules to explain how matter behaves on this level, and are the rules of chemistry or biochemistry with living systems. Now, it was discovered not too long ago, well, actually more like 100 years ago, I guess, that molecules being made up of atoms, that these atoms were further made up of subatomic particles. Subatomic particles. And these subatomic particles broke the rules of chemistry. In other words, the rules of chemistry no longer applied. So new rules needed to be created to explain how matter on this level operated. Now, one of the interesting things about subatomic particles is that they could exist in a particle state, in other words, act kind of like molecules or kind of like atoms, but they could also exist in a wave state or a purely energetic state. And molecular physicists were under the impression that this was impossible, that how could something be a particle and a wave at the same time? Early experiments, however, indicated that energy exists first in a wave state, but then can collapse into a particle state if we observe it. So, this was known as the observer effect and was based on early experiments where they were running atoms together in an atomic accelerator and observing. Now, these subatomic particles could not be seen, much less the atoms, but the energy released from the collision of the atoms could be seen in the form of light or photons. So it turned out that when an operator was present to observe the results, that the results would actually show up on the film. When the operator, for whatever reason, left the scene at the time of the experiment, no results were observed. And so the scientists did everything they could to disprove that the appearance of these particles was due to the act of observation, and they could not eliminate the observer from the experimental results. So this is one of many of the different principles that came forward from early experiments. But what it indicated is that perhaps at an even more fundamental level than the subatomic particle, we have consciousness, or the conscious observer, as a substrate of all of these levels. In other words, in order for a wave or pure energy to become a particle, there must be an observer. And that particle is what makes up the atoms and the molecules in the physical world we see. Now, an individual consciousness, which is all that is necessary to create this effect, is also part of a collective consciousness. So collectively, you could say, we are creating the world, the phenomenal world that we all live in. But this collective, which is currently in a separated state, in other words, we all believe that we are separate consciousnesses, again, may be simply an illusion of observation of our limitations, and that there is really only one consciousness that is generating this entire process. And this now, of course, from this line down, we're really going from the physical into the metaphysical. But nevertheless, this is a simple enough model, I think, for most people to appreciate. Now, these lines, dividing these different quadrants here, are really permeable layers. They're not solid lines. In other words, if we want to affect the body on a physical level, we can work with it physically, or we could work with it on the biomolecular or chemical level. So we all know that when we eat food, for example, it can change the way our physical body performs. So there's a crossover here. If we want to affect the body, however, on the most fundamental level, we need to work on the energetic, as the energetic is the support, as it were, for all of the other systems. And even more fundamentally is if we work on the level of the mind or consciousness, we are actually working on the deepest possible levels of the material reality. So we have a great asset now with our tool, with the Skio, which is able to operate on these levels directly and thus affect physical change. And you will see definitely changes on the energetic level. These are very instantaneous as change occurs very fast here. Energy is moving very fast, limitless speeds as a matter of fact. But change here on the molecular level is slow, and of course on the physical level is the slowest. So you will get fundamental changes instantaneously on an energetic level, but it may take some time before those actually permeate up into a physical change. Nevertheless, I've found this model to be simple enough for most people to accept that there are different levels of existence that have different ways of explaining and understanding them. Let's look now at some of the other issues around quantum physics and some of the other explanations we have. So matter can be organized in a pyramid model with the slowest, most dense level at the top, and here's where the laws of Newton apply. Everything solid is also made up of molecules, and new rules apply. Molecules are made up of atoms, or energy packets, and atoms are made up of subatomic particles, and new rules apply. Okay, it's not going forward for me. So the foundation, again, is consciousness. This also corresponds to what we would call the causal level of our energy field. And each level interpenetrates. The human brain, interestingly, generates not only molecular and biochemical events, but also energetic, not only electrical brain waves, but also subtle energy brain waves. These are also known as scalar waves. These waves that are created by the brain as a result of the byproduct of the biochemical and electrical functioning of the brain literally fill the universe. Because on this level, we are entering the non-local universe. These are the localized universes. In other words, all of this phenomena up here exists in specific time and place, whereas energy on the energetic and consciousness level, matter and energy are not limited to localities. Again, in the wave state, it can coexist in many places and many times. So the human brain generates these quantic events, and quantum fields literally fill the universe. Now, don't let this go to your head, but it is important to appreciate that our thoughts are literally being heard by the entire universe, and we are also being affected on this level by the entire universe. The Skio stimulates the brain's quantic action through trinary logic, advanced mathematics, scalar, and QIF penetration. So many of these advanced principles we're talking about are incorporated in the device, allowing the device to interface with us on all of these levels simultaneously. The Skio will link with a client through three identifiers.